I was adjusting the strap of my purse when I heard it. "She's just extra baggage." It wasn't shouted. Just a whisper, hushed and clipped, said too close and too carelessly to be anything but true. My name wasn't in it, but I knew it was mine. The words hit like cold water inside my coat. Not enough to make me cry out, just enough to soak straight through the lining. I froze where I stood, fingers tightening around the passport sleeve. I didn't say a word, just watched them from behind, my son, his wife, my granddaughter giggling about something on her phone. I stared at the back of my son's head, at the graying hair near his temple I used to kiss when he was small, and I wondered when love had turned to luggage. The announcements echoed above us, calling flight numbers, urging travelers to stay alert. I felt anything but. My body was present, but my heart was sitting somewhere back in a time when I was needed, when my voice mattered. I blinked slowly, willing the sting in my eyes to settle. I wouldn't cry. Not here. Not for them. I adjusted my scarf, took a deep breath, and stepped forward. Quiet, steady, invisible. I followed behind them, holding the passports like a clerk, not a mother. They didn't look back to check if I was keeping up. They didn't ask if I needed help with my bag. I might as well have been an airport employee for all they cared. The check-in line moved slowly, dragging the weight of silence with it. I clutched the documents close to my chest, the way I used to clutch their lunchboxes in the mornings, one hand holding sandwiches, the other smoothing cowlicks. I remembered the sound of their little shoes tapping the hallway floor. I used to hold their hands tightly when we crossed busy intersections. They would look up at me with complete trust. Now my hand trembled slightly, not from age, from being forgotten. My daughter-in-law was scrolling through her phone, laughing at something. My son was checking in for the group. I stood quietly, barely acknowledged. The carpet beneath my shoes was dull, worn down like a habit. The air smelled like metal and cleaning spray. The only warmth I felt came from the old memories tucked somewhere deep inside my coat pocket. I stayed quiet. That's what they expected. They called our boarding group over the loudspeaker, and my family moved as one, tickets ready, bags in hand, chatting about who got the window seat. I stood off to the side, clutching my pass like it was something breakable. They never turned around, not once. I felt the draft from the window creep up the back of my legs, cold, uncaring, just like the way they filed into the line without me. For a brief moment, I thought about calling out, about reminding them that I was part of this. But I didn't. Instead, I waited, quietly, alone, wondering when I had become a footnote in their itinerary. I walked over to the large glass windows, pretending to look at the planes, pretending to care where they were going. But I wasn't watching the runway. I was looking for something in the reflection. A woman once stood there, tired, yes, but alive with purpose. She held toddlers on each hip, diaper bags slung over one shoulder, snack cups clipped to her purse. She smiled, despite the spit-up and the tantrums. Despite the long nights, I saw her in the window now, faded, almost ghostly. I touched the glass gently, as if I could press through time and find her again. But all I touched was cold. She wouldn't recognize the silence wrapped around me now, the absence of being seen, the ache of irrelevance that crept in louder than any jet engine. I turned away before my eyes could mist. I didn't need them to see my sadness. I didn't need a witness to this kind of loss. The bench I chose was cold steel. I sat, bones aching, coat pulled tighter. But it wasn't the metal that made me shiver. It was the space between us, the wide, growing distance I couldn't seem to cross anymore. They sat a few rows away, laughing over a photo, sharing earbuds, planning their meal when we landed. I scrolled through memories instead. Birthdays, bedtime stories, school pickups. All the times I showed up, thinking love would be returned simply because I gave it. But maybe love fades when it isn't noticed. Maybe it freezes when it isn't fed. I curled my hands in my lap and stared down at them. These were the hands that once held everything together. Now, they just held silence. I could have spoken. Could have asked for a seat near them. Could have said, I'd like to feel part of this, but I didn't. I held on to my silence like I held my handbag. Familiar, worn, a little heavy, but mine. Inside it, a pack of tissues, a small mirror, 2 peppermints, and a heart that had grown used to not being asked what it needed. I stood quietly when the announcement came. Just one more voice lost in the echo. I still remember the weight of their baby shoes in my purse. Little canvas soles, always one turned upside down, tucked between Band-Aids and snack bags. I never minded. Their world used to fit inside my handbag. Juice boxes, teething rings, wipes folded into neat squares. Back then, I never questioned how much I carried. I just did it, because I was the one they reached for first, because I was home with a heartbeat. Now my suitcase rolls beside me, its handle stiff beneath my hand. It should feel heavy, but somehow my hands feel lighter, emptier. Not from age, but absence. I pause by the elevator mirror in the hotel hallway. My reflection looks back, tired but tidy. I glance down, half expecting to see a tiny shoe peeking out from my bag. But there's only a boarding pass, a water bottle, and a quiet that doesn't ask to be named. The road used to stretch like a ribbon of possibility. I remember the hum of the tires on the pavement, the windows cracked just enough to let in summer. They sat behind me, sticky fingers wrapped around juice boxes, singing songs they made up on the spot. Off-key, always, but it was perfect music. I drove with one hand on the wheel and the other reaching back, blindly fishing for napkins or stuffed toys that had slipped to the floor. "Grandma, are we there yet?" One of them would yell. "Almost," I'd call back, even if we weren't, just to keep the hope alive. We stopped at roadside diners, let them run wild in the grass beside gas stations. I always packed extra sandwiches and extra smiles, too. I didn't know those trips would become my keepsakes. Didn't know I'd miss the sound of little feet kicking the back of my seat more than the destination itself. I was holding his hand when he said it, barely loud enough to rise above the airport noise. I don't want to fly without Grandma. His little fingers gripped my wrist like he was drowning in a sea of strangers. His face pressed into my coat, warm and damp with tears, and I remember feeling taller. Not older, not tired. Just needed. A staff member offered him a sticker, and he took it only after I nodded. I was his anchor, his comfort, his favorite. Now he's taller than me, standing beside me at the same airport, headphones in. He doesn't look up when I shift my bag. He doesn't remember saying those words. But I do. I used to pack with love, not lists, coloring books, emergency granola bars, 2 of everything just in case. I'd fold their clothes with my hands still warm from tucking them in the night before. Now, I fold my own blouse with quiet hands. The fabric lays flat like my voice lately, measured, efficient. No one asks if I remembered the crossword books. No one reminds me to bring gum for takeoff. I zip my suitcase, slow and soft. The sound doesn't echo like it used to. We were outside the terminal when I noticed it. They walked ahead, talking about dinner. Someone made a joke I didn't hear the beginning of, and they all laughed together. No one turned around. There was always a hug before, a big, tight, two-armed thing, whether it was a 5-minute stop or a 5-day trip. Gas stations, hotel lobbies, airport gates. Hugs were just part of the ritual, like breathing. Now, I hold on to those hugs the way I hold on to old receipts. Folded in my wallet, faded from time, but too meaningful to throw away. I once carried their dreams, every school supply, every lost toy found, every nightmare soothed with a song. Now I carry a bag that wobbles on one wheel, and they glance at it like it's too much trouble. I watch my son's eyes flick to it, then away. No offer to help. No words even. It's strange, becoming something they'd rather check than cherish. But I grip the handle anyway, pulling it behind me through the long hallway, hoping, maybe foolishly, that someone will notice the quiet woman beside them is still carrying more than just clothes. "Are you all one family?" the woman at the check-in desk asked, smiling sweetly. I felt my mouth starting to form a yes. A soft yes, full of history. But before the sound could leave my lips, my daughter-in-law cut in. "She's just tagging along." That word, just, landed like a coin dropped into cold water, small but sharp. My smile faltered for a second, just long enough for me to notice it. I looked at the clerk, who glanced at me politely, then went back to typing. I stood there, suddenly unsure if I should even be standing there. I smiled, or at least my face did, the kind of smile you wear like a pin at a funeral, polite, appropriate, hollow. My lips curled upward, but nothing in me followed. Nodded toward the woman behind the desk, then looked down at my shoes. A pair I had worn because my granddaughter once said they made me look fun. "Room under Taylor," my son said beside me. I didn't need to say anything. Apparently, I wasn't included. I held my purse a little tighter. Sometimes silence is heavier than words. They walked ahead without saying my name. Not Grandma. Come on. Not Mom. You okay back there? Not even a simple her when handing over the room count. They just moved forward. I followed, like luggage without a tag. My name used to echo through hallways. "Grandma, look!" "Mom, where's my shirt?" Now it was as if I'd been written out of the script, still present, still breathing, but invisible. The hotel hallway felt longer than it was. My shoes patted softly on the carpet. I listened to their voices bounce ahead of me, laughing, deciding who would take which bed. I stayed behind. The elevator door opened. They stepped in, still talking, still forgetting. I could have called out, "Hold the door," but I didn't. Watched it slide shut, silver and silent, their silhouettes fading like fog on glass. And for once, I didn't feel like chasing after anyone. I turned and waited for the next one, letting the hallway hold me in its quiet. The next morning, I tied my shoes slowly, not because of my knees, though they did creak, but because I didn't feel like rushing. They were already ahead, down the hall, chatting about breakfast plans and walking routes. I moved at my own pace, brushing lint from my sleeve, letting the tea quiet settle in beside me like an old friend. I didn't want to chase anymore, not their approval, not their attention. So I walked alone, steady and soft. That sentence, 4 little words, had tugged something loose. She's just tagging along. It didn't hurt all at once. It unraveled slowly. Pulled at years I'd sewn together, birthday cakes made from scratch, sick nights spent awake, Christmas mornings wrapped in care. I sat at the vanity in my room, dabbing lotion onto my hands. Lavender. Same scent I used when the kids were small. The lamp glowed gently beside me, and the chair creaked when I shifted. I looked at my reflection and whispered, I was never just. And maybe that was enough. Menus opened like theater curtains, all eyes scanning choices, lips already forming orders. Steak medium rare, my son said. I'll do the salmon, she chimed in, barely glancing at the page. No one asked what I wanted. I held the menu close, pretending to read, even though my eyes kept circling the same line. Garden salad, no croutons. I wasn't sure what I was hungry for anymore. Not food, really. Just to be noticed. To be asked, even once, what sounds good to you, Mom? But the conversation had moved on. Something about hiking trails or souvenir magnets. I nodded as if I was part of it, and at that moment, I shrank a little. Quietly. Used to choose the birthday cake flavors. They used to wait for my nod before lighting candles. Now the flame barely flickers my way. The waitress came back with a smile, bottle in hand. She moved around the table like clockwork, refilling one. Glass then another, crimson swirling like silk in their cups. Then she turned and walked away. Mine stayed empty. I looked down, fingers brushing the cool stem of the glass. It wasn't about the wine. I wasn't even sure I wanted any. It was about not being seen, like I had become a shadow in the shape of someone they used to need. I didn't speak, didn't raise my hand. I just sat there, still, invisible in a seat I had paid for. They were laughing, really laughing, about something from the gift shop. Remember that keychain? My daughter-in-law said, nudging my son. He burst into another round of chuckles. Smiled politely, though I hadn't been there when it happened. No one thought to explain. I picked up my glass, sipped slowly, eyes on the candle flame in front of me. It danced. They didn't. It was only a few inches between us, but I felt miles. Away. They passed jokes like secret notes in class. I was the teacher they didn't want watching. I had a story about this city, how your grandfather once bought me a silver bracelet from a street vendor not far from here. I remember the way he bargained playfully, the way he whispered, "Don't lose this," when he clasped it on my wrist. I opened my mouth to share it, just to bring a piece of him into the room. But their words layered over each other like overlapping music. He wants to hike the cliffs tomorrow. Did you see the dessert tray? She thinks I packed too much. I waited for a pause that never came. I closed my mouth again, not out of fear, but from knowing. It wouldn't land. They were too full of their own stories to make space for mine. So I folded the memory back into my heart, like tissue paper around something delicate. The check came in a neat leather folder, dropped gently, in the center of the table. They didn't notice. They were still laughing about tomorrow's plan, still spinning jokes about hiking shoes and spa times. I reached for my purse. Habit, I suppose. I had always been the one who took care of things without being asked. I slid in my card, signed my name with a flick that no one watched. It wasn't about the money. It was about remembering to care when others forget how. That has always been my quiet job, the one who sees, even while being unseen. Later that night, I lay in the hotel bed, staring at the ceiling fan as it turned slow and soft above me. It made a gentle thumping sound, like distant footsteps. I counted the costumes I sewed for school plays, the dinners I stayed up late preparing, the mornings I skipped breakfast so they wouldn't miss the bus, all those moments layered on top of each other, like old quilts folded in the attic. And still, they didn't see me. Not really. I turned onto my side, pulling the blanket up to my chin. The hallway light seeped under the door like the past trying to re-enter. But it couldn't change the truth. I had seen them in every moment that mattered. I just wasn't sure if they ever truly looked back. The station was full of noise, rolling. Luggage, boarding calls, footsteps rushing in all directions. I was weaving my way toward the far platform when I saw him. A small boy, no older than 7, knees pulled up to his chest, sitting near one of the stone pillars. His face was flushed, his cheeks streaked with drying tears. But he made no sound. Just sat there, still, like he was holding his breath against the weight of the world. People walked past him like he wasn't even there. I slowed down. My heart did too. I knelt slowly, careful not to startle him. "Hey there," I said gently, my voice soft as the cotton in my old Sunday dress. His eyes met mine, wide, wet, and full of something that made my breath catch, like I was the first person to actually see him. I reached into my purse without thinking, dug past the loose change and receipts, found a tissue I'd tucked beside a lavender sachet. "Here," I said, holding it out. He didn't speak, just reached up with quiet fingers and took it. His hand brushed mine, and something passed between us, unspoken but deeply felt, like someone had handed me back a piece of trust I hadn't known I'd lost. He looked down at the tissue in his lap, then back up at me. "I'm waiting for my mama," he whispered. My heart twisted, just slightly. "I'll wait with you," I said. I eased myself down onto the bench beside him. The metal was warm from the sun, hard against my hip, but I didn't care. The breeze from the tunnel stirred the air. The loudspeaker buzzed something I didn't catch. We sat there quietly. Him, still holding the tissue. Me, just holding the moment. I didn't feel invisible. I didn't feel like extra weight. For the first time in a long while, I felt like someone's safe place. She came running, hair wild, purse swinging, eyes frantic and scanning the crowd. When she saw us, she froze for half a second, then rushed forward. "Oh, thank God," she gasped, scooping him into her arms. She turned to me, tears in her lashes. "Thank you," she said, not lightly, not casually, like the words had weight. We locked eyes, and in that look there was understanding, not between strangers, but between mothers. She didn't know me, but somehow she did, and in that second, I felt like I mattered again. They walked away, his small hand tucked into hers, but just before they reached the stairs, he looked back, lifted his little hand and waved. I smiled, and tears gathered gently behind my eyes. I stood there as the train rumbled to life behind me, the platform settling back into quiet. Pigeons returned to the rafters. The sky hinted at rain. And in the stillness, I realized something. Kindness doesn't always skip generations. Sometimes it just takes a little longer to arrive. The kiosk sat quietly in the corner of the hotel lobby, almost hidden beside a rack of brochures. I walked over slowly, my purse clutched to my side like something precious. No announcement, no build-up, just a quiet decision. I smiled softly at the woman behind the counter. "Hi, I'd like to change my flight, please." My voice didn't shake. My hands didn't fumble. I felt steady. She asked for my booking number and started clicking keys. I could hear the soft rustle of paper, the hum of an air vent, the lemon scent of hotel polish in the air. I didn't glance back toward the elevators. I didn't wonder what they were doing upstairs. This wasn't rebellion. It was a relief, and I breathed a little easier as the reservation pulled up on her screen. She blinked when I said it the first time. I'd like to fly solo. Maybe it was my tone, calm but clear. Or maybe she wasn't used to hearing someone my age speak with that kind of quiet certainty. "I'm sorry, ma'am." I smiled, softer this time. "Just one ticket. A different return flight, please." There was no tremble in my words, just clarity, like I had found something I didn't know I'd lost. She nodded and kept typing. The clock ticked behind her, and a soft classical tune floated down from the ceiling speakers. For once, I wasn't asking anyone for permission. That evening, I slipped out to the courtyard. No one noticed I was gone. The patio was empty, just me, a ceramic teacup on a small table, and string lights blinking softly overhead like quiet stars. Palm fronds rustled. A flute played somewhere far off. I didn't tell anyone what I'd done. Didn't need to. The moment didn't ask for applause. The stillness clapped enough. I let the warmth of the teacup settle between my palms and felt something shift in me, something good. I had done a small thing that felt big, and the quiet around me didn't feel empty. It felt earned. The tea wasn't anything special, just mint and honey, but it was mine. I picked it. I poured it. I sweetened it the way I like, and I didn't have to ask if anyone else wanted a cup. I held it with both hands, letting the warmth seep into my fingers. I didn't stir it for someone else. Didn't split it. Didn't wait. And somehow, that made it taste more like me than anything I'd had in a long time. The chair across from me stayed empty, but it didn't feel lonely. I watched the steam from my tea curl into the night air, the spoon tapping softly against the side of the mug. No voices filled the silence. No one asked for the check, and I didn't miss it. That empty chair didn't remind me of who wasn't there. It reminded me of who I still was, maybe even who I was finally becoming. Later that night, I sat on the edge of the bed, the glow from the lamp painting soft light across the room. My tea mug rested empty on the nightstand. I opened the email. Confirmed. A single ticket. Return flight changed. My name stood alone on the itinerary, not bundled beneath theirs, not included as a courtesy. Just me. And it felt like more than a booking. It felt like a new signature, like a quiet declaration that I wasn't tagging along anymore. Not on this trip. Not in this life. I pulled the covers over my lap and let the hum of peace fill the space where noise used to be. They were comparing museum hours and arguing about where to get the best latte. I stood a few feet back, folding my paper map into my purse. No one looked my way. I could have said something. Be right back, or I'll catch up. but I didn't want to. Not out of anger, just clarity. I turned quietly and walked toward the side door, slipping past the breakfast table and out into the morning. The scent of fresh croissants trailed behind me as the door clicked shut. It didn't feel like leaving them. It felt like choosing me. I had a paper map tucked in my purse, the soft kind that creases just right. No apps, no itinerary. Just my feet and the sound of the street unfolding. I walked slowly, flats brushing against cobblestones still damp from morning cleaning. Shopkeepers were just unlocking their doors. A woman swept dust from her threshold, and a child chased a pigeon down the alley. The air smelled of cinnamon and something citrus, maybe oranges left out in the sun too long. I didn't know where I was headed. And that was the thrill. Directionless, but not lost. Every turn felt like a question I didn't have to answer. And for once, I wasn't trailing behind anyone. I was walking with myself. The scent hit me before I saw it. Cloves, coriander, maybe even fenugreek. It pulled me to a small stall tucked between two linen shops. Woven baskets overflowed with dried herbs and red gold powders, some tied with string, others scooped into folded paper. I leaned in and closed my eyes. I was 6, years old again. My mother at the stove, sleeves rolled up, a worn apron wrapped twice around her waist. The smell of dinner bubbling gently, her hand stirring slow circles into a dented pot. She never measured anything, just smelled and knew. I opened my eyes and smiled at the memory sitting warm in my chest. Some scents don't fade, they just wait for you to find them again. She was selling scarves, the bright kind that shimmer even in shade. I pointed to one, tried to ask the price with broken words and a hopeful smile. She laughed, not at me, but with me, and waved her hands as if to say, "It's okay." Then she handed me a warm pastry from a basket beside her. I took it with both hands, unsure if I should, but she patted mine and nodded. We didn't share a language, not really, but she looked me in the eye like I mattered, and that hadn't happened in a long time. No one tugged at my sleeve. No one asked, "What's next?" I wandered where the air pulled me, past flower stalls, toward street musicians, into quiet cafes with crooked chalk signs. I lingered without guilt, sat on a bench just because the light hit it softly, and I didn't explain a thing. For the first time in years, I was nobody's responsibility, just free. The street curved uphill, and I followed it, not because it led to a landmark, but because my feet wanted to. I passed a window with hand-painted glass, a bakery with doors flung open, the scent of almond and butter curling out into the day. At the top of the hill, the city opened up below me, rooftops glowing warm in the sun, church bells ringing somewhere in the distance. I stood still, didn't take a photo, didn't narrate it to anyone, just breathed it in. I wasn't following anyone's plan today, and that in itself was a kind of arrival. I wasn't sightseeing, I was seeing myself. Again. They were already gathered at the gate, checking tickets, juggling carry-ons, laughing over something I couldn't hear. No one counted heads. No one turned around. I stood a few paces back, coffee in hand, watching them like a stranger might. And the thing is, I wasn't surprised, not anymore. I used to hope, wait for a glance, a gesture, something that said, "We see you." But now, I didn't. feel forgotten. I felt released, like I had finally stopped holding my breath for an invitation that wasn't coming. I chose a seat across the terminal, not too far, not too close. I could still see them. They couldn't see me. I folded my hands in my lap, not to brace myself, but to rest. They buzzed in a little group near the gate agent, voices mingling with the hum of rolling suitcases, and I just sat still. No panic, no tension, just stillness. Like I owed it to myself after all that movement that never went anywhere. It was my son who saw me. He looked up, scanning the gate like something felt off. His eyes landed on mine across the floor, and he paused, his brow pulled tight. He tilted his head slightly, confused. No one else noticed, but that moment, him seeing me and not quite understanding why I wasn't beside them, was enough. He walked over slowly. Not with anger, not even with concern, just uncertainty, and that told me everything I needed to know. He stood in front of me, frowning slightly. "Aren't you boarding?" I looked up and answered calmly, "No, I have my own flight." His mouth opened, then closed again. No quick reply. I stood, brushing a crease from my coat. My gate display glowed behind me with a different number, a different path. "I changed it yesterday," I added gently. Not defensive, not bitter, just clear. The words felt like a coat I'd taken off long ago and finally put back on. Familiar. Strong. Mine. I didn't owe him an explanation, not for choosing peace, not for choosing me. He didn't speak right away. I met his gaze, steady, and when I said it again, "I've got my own flight," my voice didn't waver. It didn't ask for understanding. It just stood there, firm and quiet, like the voice I used to read him to sleep with. The voice that once told him, "You're safe." Now it told me I am. The wheels lifted, and with them, something inside me loosened. Not all at once, just piece by piece. The blue sky outside the window stretched wide, the kind of blue that doesn't ask for anything. I watched as the buildings below turned to shapes, then patterns, then nothing but land and clouds. And in that quiet ascent, I felt something lift out of me too, like stepping out of a heavy coat at the end of winter. The old weight I didn't know I'd been dragging, years of quiet hurts. Unanswered words, invisible roles, began to peel away. I didn't cry. I just breathed. Deeper than I had in days. The hum of the engines wrapped around me like white noise, like a lullaby that didn't need words. And with every mile upward, I felt more grounded than I had on solid earth. Midway through the flight, I looked around the cabin. No one knew me. No one stared. No one asked what I did, where I was going, or who I was traveling with. And strangely, it felt good. Not like being ignored, like being unassigned. I wasn't carrying anyone's version of me here. I was just a woman in 14C holding her tea and minding her peace. And for now, that was more than enough. She leaned down gently, pushing the drink cart. "Can I get you anything, ma'am?" It was a simple question, a common word, but it stopped me. Not in a dramatic way, just in that soft, pause in the heart way. "Ma'am." It said, "I see you. I respect you." It had been days since someone addressed me without hesitation, without tone. Without forgetting, I looked up, smiled. "Tea, please." She nodded, and in that tiny moment, I felt more acknowledged than I had in rooms filled with people who claimed to know me. I reached for the button on the armrest, pressed it slowly, and let my seat lean back, not because I was tired, but because I could. No one behind me asked if it was okay. No one beside me to look over and judge. I stretched my legs forward, pulled the blanket higher over my knees. The hum of the vents was soft. The light above dimmed just enough. I closed my eyes, and in that quiet, I allowed myself comfort without guilt. That seat cradled more than my body. It held a quiet yes I hadn't given myself in years. The clouds drifted beneath us like slow thoughts. The sky outside had turned golden along the edges, one of those soft, forgiving colors you can only see from above the noise. I didn't feel angry. I wasn't writing speeches in my head, wasn't rehashing conversations or planning comebacks. I just felt light, like I had returned to something older than the roles I had played, something truer. That's the thing about dignity. It doesn't slam doors. It doesn't shout. It just stays with you, quietly, wholly, even when no one else does. I folded my tray table, laid my palms gently in my lap, and looked out the window. And in that moment, flying above everything I'd left behind, I didn't miss any of it. I just felt full and free. If you've ever walked through a crowd and felt unseen, or finally chose yourself after being forgotten, I hope this story reminded you that it's never too late to take your own flight. If it spoke to your heart, I'd be grateful if you'd stay a while and share your journey in the comments below.